What's up, humans? Welcome to another episode of Humans of the Multiverse.
Our goal is to bring people together by featuring the stories of our friends from all over the globe.
We want to share our interests with the world, and that's why we started this show.
So if you enjoyed this episode, share it with your friends. Press the like button and subscribe to our channel.
And if you have a compelling story to tell, send us an email.
Thanks for watching.
In this week's episode, we dive into the inspiring story of Derrick Wayne Mullins, writer, director, and cancer survivor behind the powerful independent film, The Warrior. Join us for an in-depth conversation about his journey, the making of the film, and its heartfelt mission. Check out Derrick's film on Amazon Prime. Enjoy the show. Mike, his fantasy football title one year, huh, Mike?
I had drafted Calvin Johnson on my fantasy team. I grew up in Houston, Texas, so I don't know nothing about Detroit.
But, Megatron's a good pick. Just saying.
Heck yeah, he carried me to victory in fantasy football.
Who was the quarterback at that time? He was the first round pick as well.
Stafford.
I can't. What is it?
Matt Stafford.
Yeah, I couldn't. I was on the tip of my tongue. That's right.
They could never get a solid team around him. He leaves and wins the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Yeah, imagine that. They had another big. It was an offensive lineman at the time that everyone wanted from Nebraska, I think, on that same team, right? I'm trying to think of his name.
Sewell, Ndamukong Suh.
Yeah, Sue. Yeah, exactly.
Player though, he didn't last very long.
No, but there was a lot of high hopes for the Lions back then.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Being a diehard Lions fan, I was very hopeful. But they're great now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of got out of paying attention to football the last couple of years for some reason. I don't know. Something about COVID made me stop watching sports altogether. The only sport I watch right now is MMA.
It was a tough watch during that time for sure.
Yeah. We're already recording. We like to kind of soft enter these with just with a little casual combo. So Detroit, born and raised. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I was born in 1977 in a blizzard, Michigan.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
Detroit Children's Hospital. I was, kind of just a normal baby. I was diagnosed with pyloric stenosis when I was about 1, which is where they had to basically your digestive tract. They basically had to open it up a little bit. I had pyloric stenosis when I was like about 1, and because I kept on eating food and then just immediately throwing it up. That's how I kind of found it. And then at 2.5, I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia in 1980, where it was a death notice in the 80s. Like you're talking about 70, 79, 80 when I got diagnosed. There's about a 10% chance of survival for childhood cancer like that in the 1980s. So, so that kind of is the beginning of my story.
So tell us what exactly is acute lymphoblastic leukemia? What's that?
So it's a cancer of the blood. Yeah. Basically how they found it is all kids bruise. So it's like, if you see like a bruise here and there, a kid falls down, he's bruising. I had bruises throughout my entire body. And they immediately thought that, okay, there's something wrong. He's literally a walking bruise. And that's sort of how they found it. And then when I went to the doctor, they diagnosed me with ALL. And I was 2.5 when I was diagnosed with it.
Do you have I have random access memories. That's a Daft Punk reference, by the way. I have random access memories to that time, 2.5. And random access memory is it just pops in randomly. You don't get, you can't just conjure it. Do you have anything like that from that time?
No, but I remember stuff when I was like 6 or 7. I don't remember that young, but I do remember when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, because I was dealing with a lot of adult stuff really early. So it kind of wakes you up to okay, so this is not a normal childhood. My parents tried to make it a normal childhood, but going to the doctor every single day, making excuses why I have to leave school, because the kids are like, well, why do you leave every day? Like, what's wrong with you? And it's like, I'm a little kid who's embarrassed about being sick. And it's like trying to tell a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid that there's something wrong, and they're like, well, you just got the cooties. And you got something going on there that I don't want to talk to you. you're gonna spread it to me.
Now, can I ask, even at that age, did you feel not well, or did you just have the energy of a 6-year-old ready to run out to recess? And was your parents having to tell you, "Oh, slow down, be careful"?
If I remember correctly, I felt normal, but the concern is if I get cut, I could bleed to death because of all the medicine that they were giving me. It thinned my blood out so much, so literally a paper cut could have killed me. So it's sort of like they tried to give me a normal childhood and I played sports, but it was sort of like had to pick and choose. We had to go to the doctor and ask them like what I could do and what I couldn't do. You know what I mean? So it's like they tried to somewhat give me a normal childhood, even though like the world is crashing in. You know what I mean? So it was a difficult time.
Yeah, I can imagine, because you felt normal. It's because it was normal. It was your normal, right?
Yeah. So it's like I remember the stuff that I do remember that young is they had what they called bone marrow. What we call them bone marrows and spinal taps, where they basically take a needle this long and put it into your spine. So I would have to have those on a regular basis because that's where they would collect the bone information to find out like what the medicine was doing for me or what wasn't it doing for me. So like I had to have this on a regular basis, and I would be running around the hospital and they'd have to chase me down. And there was many times where my mom would literally have to sit on me. Like there's a little kid, and then you got a grown woman sitting on their child to get them to like stay there. And she would just be crying the entire time. So it's like, it's one of those things like, as a little kid, you're kind of oblivious to a lot of stuff. But then when you are being sat on by your mom with tears coming down her eyes, it's hard to shake that, the image. So I have stuff like that where I remember, being real young and having a grown woman sitting on me. Like,
yeah. And so what, like, as far as like what the treatment at the time, what you said you were going to the doctor almost every day or very regularly. What exactly was the treatment besides that?
I don't remember every single pill, but at certain points I was taking like 15 to 20 pills a day, prednisone and blood thinners, and then they have to give me something that would bring my thinning blood up a little bit so that it regulated it, and then they worked on the blood count, and then they worked on your cell count and everything that's associated with your blood and it pumping, and making your body go. They were constantly probing me and testing me and giving me this and then taking me off. So like it was a wild time, having a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid taking that many pills.
Yeah, for sure. Prednisone makes me feel like shit. I have a hard time taking it. I'm what's called a steroid reactor, but I don't know if you remember taking it. But I can't sleep when I take that stuff. So, so that's just like your normal life as a 6, 7, 8-year-old. So you mentioned the other kids. I'm curious, like what that was like for you, and if you could give us a little bit more details on that. Like it's at the 80s and like everyone is like pretty ignorant in the 80s, and there's no World Wide Web, bullying wasn't a thing that people talked about too often in the 80s. And so, I mean, what was your experience there?
The hardest part for me during that time was because of all of the medication that I was taking is I would go from 0 to 60 in about 5 seconds. So I didn't have patience, or if something was irritating me, it went to 10 like immediately because of all the medication that I was taking. Like my emotions would go up and down like a yo-yo.
Like prednisone does that.
Yeah. So I remember little kids be messing. Me and my brother are 16 months apart. So there was times where me and him went to the same school, but then there was other times where we didn't. So my brother was a nerdy kid, and they'd be messing with my brother, and I'd be like, "Okay, you're getting off the bus, and I'm punching you in the face," and they'd just be like, "What?" I'm like, "No, I'm punching you in the face." So they'd come off the bus, and I just start bewailing on these kids for making fun of my brother. But I couldn't they couldn't The kids couldn't understand that I went from 0 to 60 immediately because of all the medication, because it was just, they didn't have any idea of what my home life was. They were just like, this guy's a dork and this guy's this and that, you know what I mean? So
Yep. And as a kid, they have no context for that either. But
nope.
do you also recall, were there any classmates, even at a young age, that you could kind of confide in, that maybe understood what you were dealing with? Even?
No, not really. The teachers that I had, my elementary school teachers, were pretty much my protectors, kind of, where they're just like, if they heard somebody making fun of me, or if they had some sort of comment about like, well, why does Derrick have to leave every day? The teacher would, and I remember her name, Mrs. Imonic, and you're talking about 40 years ago. And she would be very protective of me, as far as like if she saw somebody was making a comment, or somebody was, planning something to make fun of me or whatever, she would be all over it, because it's like, he can't help it. You know what I mean? And they can't help their ignorance, but he can't help that he's sick. It's not like he chose to be sick. You know what I mean? So
what was her name again?
Mrs. Imonic.
Shout out Mrs. Imonic. Yeah, we like to shout out good teachers on our show because they're rare. So
who knows where she is? That was 40 years ago. Yeah. But shout out Mrs. Imonic.
Yeah. Mike, you were saying something? Sorry.
I was just going to say, at that age, I hate to say it, but probably some of your little classmates were jealous that you were leaving class, and they just didn't know any better, and they were going to make a deal out of it because you got to get up and leave, because that young was going on.
Yeah. It's like, why does he get to leave at lunchtime? It's like, do you not understand where I'd go? I have a needle this thick going in my side. It's not a fun time.
Yeah. I wish you were in my class, because I would have whooped some. I used to, when I was a kid, I used to like get really sad. Like, I was a very emotional kid, but like I would always get really upset when other kids were getting picked on, and I'd be at home like crying about somebody else getting picked on. And I used to get in lots of fights defending other kids. So I would have had your back, Derrick. I wish you were in my class.
Oh, I appreciate that.
I would have
appreciate it.
But so did you have like friends that were your age?
I had neighborhood kids that were my age that I hung out with. Nobody really at the school. Okay. We had neighbors and kids that lived down the street that we would meet playing kickball or baseball or something like that, where it's like
the 80s and 90s, right?
Where you could just walk up to some random kid and be like, "You want to play?" So I had a lot of those type of friends in the neighborhood, not necessarily at the school.
Got it. That's what life was like in the 80s and 90s. The latchkey kid, you just go, bye, mom. You hop on your bike, go knock on someone's door, right?
Yeah. We better be home at dark, or before it gets dark out. We better be home. And that was basically the rule, especially during the summer, so.
Yep.
So you were easily bruising and stuff. How were, like, I mean, was your mom always telling you, don't ride your bike, don't get in fights, don't, like.
It was definitely a battle between my parents about like treating me as a normal kid, and, putting saran wrap and bubble tape around me so I don't accidentally cut myself or get injured in some way. So there was this constant like, well, you got to treat him like a kid. But it's like, on the other hand, you've got all this stuff, medical stuff, that it could have went either way. I could have run into a situation where I'm bleeding in public and nobody knows what to do. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like, it was trying to have a normal childhood, but also juggling the medical stuff at the same time.
Right. And so what was the period of time where like you were sick? Like, how long did this last?
From 2.5, which would have been 1980, to I went into final remission when I was about 9 or 10. Because I'd go in remission, and then I'd go out of remission, and then in remission and go out of remission. So I went in and out of remission a couple times. So the whole process was what?
Okay. And I mean, did you have that concept of like the seriousness of it? Like you're saying now as an adult, 10% chance, what did your parents tell you? Like what were,
Very limited information when I was younger, but I started to figure out it the older that I got, where it's like this is a big deal, because my parents couldn't hold back their emotions. So it's like, watching your mom cry, and it's like, this is some serious stuff going
That's a
on.
clue, even before you're old enough to read all the big words, undoubtedly,
Yes.
that involve, but you can tell when your mom's having that reaction.
Yeah. And it's like, you don't blame her. She's literally watching her son, die, or in the process of dying. So it's like, it's tough to, like I said, the ignorance of a child, but you see what's going on in front of you, which is, it's difficult to not take it somewhat serious.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to shout out your mom. I know you've spoken in the past about, the film that we're going to get to in a minute honors your mom as well as the doctor who helped you. Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
So I wanted to write a movie about me as a little kid with cancer, because it was a big deal, and I wanted to tell a story of perseverance, because there's a lot of people out there that have cancer, and there are kids that have childhood cancer every day. And I wanted to have the multiple messages. I wanted to honor my mom. I wanted to honor the struggle it was, because there was no divorce talk. My parents were very like, we're getting through this, and we're getting through this together. There is no picking your stuff up and leaving. That's not how it works. So like, that was established very young, very early. So it's like, I wanted to make a movie that had multiple things, where it was like, there's a struggle and there's no divorce words in this struggle. We're in it together, no matter how crappy it gets. We're in it together. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to have a shout out for my mom. I wanted to have a shout out for people that were like me, that dealt with not necessarily just cancer, but other illnesses. I wanted some people to watch it and be like, wow. And then as a storyteller, I wanted to have that roller coaster of emotions, where it picks you up and then drops you down, and it picks you up and then drops you down, because that's what my childhood was.
Yeah.
And I wanted to portray that as well as I could, about going up and down. And people are just like, well, do you have something to say about your movie? I'm like, bring tissues. Just bring them.
Yeah, and so that's I mean, that is literally remission, not remission, remission, not remission. So it's exactly what it was like for you. What about the doctor? Was there a doctor that was like the guy?
Yeah, I use his name. I use his last name. I don't use his first name, but Dr. Hutchinson. And I remember when I was a little kid and I met him, and he was very, very analytical and very serious when I first met him. And the more that I had a relationship with him over the years, the more he softened up, and he was more responsive. And I wanted to also have that in the movie, where when I get sick and I fall down and we're at the hospital and it's all chaos, that the doctor is very stern. Like, he wasn't a jerk. He wasn't anything like that. He just wanted to make sure that you knew that there was a problem. And then over the years, when I'd go in and out of remission and things would look positive for me, and he started to soften up, and I wanted to show that in the film.
So he wasn't a static character at all. He showed the progression through your story. It changed throughout your story.
And as a writer, I like progression in characters. So
yes,
I was getting to do that anyway.
Got it. Yeah, I wanted to ask about writing. So we always see yourself as a filmmaker? Was this the plan? Or what other creative stuff? Like, are you a writer in general?
So when I was a little kid, drawing, I drew and painted. I did all kinds of stuff. All my stuff was up in the little student, like it was sort of like a little student museum with people like drawings and everything. Like a quarter of those are mine. Because I would draw and I used it as a release. And the older that I got, the different how I express myself in writing and speaking. And I used not necessarily just painting and pictures, but I used it in painting the picture with words, with scripts, and with little shows and little skits and all that stuff. So I've always had the creative bug in me because my mom was a very creative person. She would be like, I remember I'm a little kid and we were at like a craft show. And I was like, this is so boring. Why are we here? It's so boring. And my mom literally would have a table the size of this desk with all the stuff that she had made. She would make like Christmas ornaments and dolls and all this stuff. And then I remember she wrote a manuscript when I was like 6 or 7 years old. I had no idea what a manuscript was. It's just a pile of paper. I don't know what's going on over there. So she was very artsy. She was very creative. And it's one of those things that the only regret I have is because I was so young, I didn't get to appreciate that side of her as much because I was just a kid like, oh, it's so boring. Like, what are we doing?
It sounds like you're taking a little bit of that, though, with what you're doing with the movie, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to tell as a little kid all the time that it takes into creating that artwork and those pieces. And then that's your big chance to go stand behind a table and sell it all day. But to a little kid, you're like, hey, why are we standing behind a table all day long?
Yeah, like, what are we doing?
So let me ask you. So it's the movie is like semi-autobiographical, correct?
Yes, it's not 100%, but I would say probably about 70% autobiography. Like, okay. I had to Hollywoodize a little bit.
Sure.
And then if I told the full story, it'd been like a 5-hour movie. So I'm like, well, I gotta tell a story without making it 5 hours. So.
Right.
Do you mind taking a moment to bridge the gap between overcoming the illness, which it sounds like, by all accounts, by middle school, you had surpassed the illness. How did that get you into adulthood? Did you want to go to film school? Did you dream of being a director? And then, of course, making your own biography.
I never really thought about it when I was like a middle school. I still did my drawings and my pictures and everything that I would do in my room. When I went to high school, I had a radio and television class in high school when I was a freshman or sophomore. And then when we had moved away from the district that I went to, so I went to a different high school my senior year, and they had a vocational technical center, which is a VOTEC, which is like half my day I'd be in VOTEC, and then I'd come over to the high school for 2 or 3 classes or whatever it was. And it was photography and video production that I was in that class for.
Awesome.
And a guy named John Pruzak was he was the instructor, and he had worked on Roger and Me. I don't know if you've ever heard of Roger and Me. It was a documentary in the 80s. He had worked on that, and I don't know what position he had. I don't know if he was a writer or I don't know what position he had. And he was my instructor, and he encouraged me to go to a higher education because he's like, Derrick, you got a gift, dude. Like, you got to do something. Because he saw the effort that I was putting in it and the little skits that we'd make. Because we couldn't make like full length anything because it's like it's school, so they don't have the time to be able to. But the skits that we were coming up with and the little things, and he's like, dude, you got a gift. You got to at least try. So I said, okay, I'll try. So then I graduated high school, went to college and went to community college and got a business degree. And I was yearning to do what I saw people on TV doing. And I started writing little short films and everything else. I want to say just after high school. Then probably... Yeah, just after high school, and then my early 20s, I was writing little short films and stuff like that. And I went to a 1-year program called Specs Howard School of Broadcast Arts, which is in Southfield, Michigan. And they were more broadcast; they weren't necessarily film school, but I could touch cameras like immediately after the first month. If I went to Wayne State Film School or something like that, they're not touching cameras until like the 4th year. It's like, no, I want to start touching cameras as soon as I can. So that's why I decided to go to a place like that. And people are just like, well, you should have went to film school instead. And I'm like, no, I was playing with, cameras after a month.
Right.
I was getting that experience that I needed. You know what I mean? How to be on set and how to act on set. So like all that stuff is valuable. Because I remember working with people that were straight out of film school that still had no idea what they were doing. Still had no clue.
Well, that's a lot. That's the case with modern educational degrees. Like a lot of people graduate and have no idea what they're doing. So I think you went the right route, my friend. I really do. So how did you? So it's semi-autobiographical, and you're talking like a 6 to 7 year battle or longer, somewhere in that range. How did you choose like which moments that you were going to be like, this one has to be in the movie? Like, was it just memory based, like your strongest memories, or
some of the strongest memories? Yeah, like me running down the hallways at the hospital when I'm 5, 6, 7 years old. From those, we didn't have the space for the character to start running. So I'm like, well, you're going to run around the room and they're going to try to tackle you. So inside in the movie, there's a part where everybody's running around trying to capture him and everything. And that literally happened when I was a little kid, like on the bad days. So it's like, I wanted to have that in the movie. And the relationship between my parents, where my dad went to work and the company that he worked for went on strike, and I want to say they closed the doors for about 6 months to a year or something like that. And it was happening during the time that I was sick. So there was a lot of concern about my dad not having a job. So I wanted to have that in there. And luckily it only lasted about 6 or 8 months. He went back to work and everything else. But it was a real concern because there was a lot of stuff happening during that time. So I wanted to have that in there. And I wanted to have the doctor and the relationship that he had made with my mom and me. I wanted to have that in there. So there was a lot of moments where it's like, if I'm going to address them, I have to address them the right way. And then because I was diagnosed so early, there's no way I'm going to get a 3-year-old to be able to act. So I made the character 8 years old so that I could take all these stories from what happened from 2.5 till I was 10 and just kind of put them into an 8-year-old kid.
That makes so much sense. From a practical standpoint, you're right. You're going to try to find a toddler actor or preschooler actor and then also another 3rd grade actor later on, because it's a big difference. It's much easier just to go with a standard elementary school age,
So the Macaulay Culkin, when he was like 5 years old, they don't grow on trees.
Right.
Because he was in Uncle Buck and he was on a bunch of other stuff when he was like 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah, and he just loved the camera back then. He hates it now, but he loved it back then. So those are the like main themes. I love the theme of your parents like basically saying, we're going to do this no matter what, because you hear stories of either just tragedy in families just totally just destroying the family. And I wanted to ask, you wanted to make sure that theme was in there because that must have been so important to your recovery,
Yeah, that somebody has your back no matter what, no matter how crappy it gets, that somebody has your back. So yeah, I'm very appreciative of that. Again, as a little kid, you don't quite understand all of it, the complexity of it. But my dad definitely established that pretty early. Like, we're sticking together, thick and thin.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing. Now, I know that part of one of the themes of the movie is you're kind of confused, or I don't know if that's the right word, but your anger and disappointment, I guess, with God and religion. What was your family's religious background, and can you walk us through that theme a little bit?
Well, my dad was forced to church when he was a little kid, and he believes in God. He just doesn't go to church because he was forced when he was younger, and he's like, I don't want to be forced.
Sure.
Because my mama was very much a religious person. And my mom was she didn't go to church too much. She'd go here and there. But she was very, she'd read the Bible, but she would do it on her own terms. She's very spiritual. She believed in grace and honor, and she had a lot of qualities of a Christian, even though I wouldn't say that she was wearing the flag of a Christian, but she was very much a very faithful person.
Okay. And so when it comes to you, what was your perception of like, did you have like those like, why me, like God?
Yeah, that was like I believed in God. I think that's why I had those feelings, because it's like, if this person really loves me, then what the heck is going on with this? So as a little kid, I never questioned religion. It was more like, I'm getting dogpiled and somebody named God is not helping.
Right.
So I wanted to have that where I believed in God. I was a God-fearing person, but I also had doubts because of all of the stuff. And I think there is some naiveness to that, where it's like, you're a
Sure.
little kid and you want to think that Santa Claus exists. You want to believe that God exists. And it's like, I believe that there is something out there. I don't know what it is, but there's something. And it's like, if he exists, then why is he dogpiling on me? And that was the type of attitude that I had as a little kid.
It becomes tricky at a young age because a lot of what's communicated to children at that age is basically behavioral instructions, like you need to behave this way because God wants you to, and so we, the parents, don't have to deal with your misbehavior. And then you, on the other hand, were a perfectly well-adjusted kid who wasn't trying to stir up trouble whatsoever, and you got dealt one of the most challenging hands to deal with. So there was no element of like, well, you were behaving poorly and now you have to deal with the consequences of your actions. No, not whatsoever.
That's the one thing that I've had to try to, even today, I have to explain to people, like, look, there's a difference between what's the best way to creating your own problems. I made this poor decision. The problems, I brought my own problems on because I made poor decisions. I didn't make poor decisions. The decisions were forced upon me. I had no like say so in things. So it's like that, like I said, even today, I kind of struggle with that, where it's like, I had to deal with the fact that I got a crummy hand, and I got to figure out a way to make myself happy and to have a successful life and doing things that I enjoy to do. So it's like, even today, 48 years old, that's kind of a struggle as well. So
yeah, that makes sense. So I wanted to hang around the spirituality theme a little bit longer. So as far as like making a movie, if you make it quote unquote too religious, you might like alienate a certain audience or whatever. Did you consider that while making the movie? Like, you wanted to have the spiritual theme, but then you didn't want to, like, because I've watched some movies where it's like, over the top, and then some movies where they just kind of balance it just right. Was that part of the plan? Or
yeah, I wanted to have the little kid questioning what was going on with the dogpiling thing. I wanted to have, my mom was a very faithful person. So I wanted to have that struggle where I didn't want to go too far. I didn't want to go too far with religion, because we didn't go to church really, but we were we believed in God, and we believe that there's a higher power, and what that is, we have no idea. I wanted to give that, I wanted to go in that direction, as opposed to like, we go to church on Sunday and everything's good and we're sitting in the pews. Like, I didn't want to necessarily do that. I wanted to have where we're a faithful person, but we also are questioning all the stuff that's happening. Like, because I think there's a lot of people that have that doubt. There's a lot of people that steer away from religion, and my brother is one of them, because of that. Because it's like, it's almost embracing it as opposed to saying, I'm done, see ya.
Oh yeah, and I framed the question in terms of children a moment ago, but to a critically thinking adult who tries to live righteously, who gets dealt a tough hand, that might be a more ontological shock than anything that a 6-year-old is wondering about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, Mike. So it's was part of the intention of the film to like have an impact on like advocacy for childhood leukemia or anything like that? And if so, how's that going?
Yes, I wanted people to watch it and have faith and understand that, like, I always tell people that sometimes I feel like I'm in a room by myself.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that is because of all the stuff that happened when I was a little kid, where I just don't think that people can understand or relate. And I
Hmm.
use
Hmm.
art to say, I'm here, I went through this, and hopefully you can relate to it.
Hmm.
So,
Did Sorry, go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh no. So now, so yeah, that's I wanted to put it out there, not necessarily to stuff it down people's throats, but to, like I said, there's people out there, and don't feel like that you're the only one that's going through this, because there are people that are out there, and I
Yes.
wanted that theme to resonate, where it's like, it life's tough, and there's people that are out there battling, and don't ever feel like that you have to do it alone.
Mhm.
Has anyone reached out to you since the movie came out and said, "Hey, this what I needed to hear"?
Not really, because I'm an indie filmmaker, and
Hmm.
I'm not backed by a big studio. Everything I'm doing is grassroots, and people that
Hmm.
that actually watch the movie are like, "Wow." So there's a lot of people that are just like, "That seems nice," and then they never watch it.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
But like the people that have actually watched it was like, "Oh my god, okay,
Mhm.
this is the thing." There's actually a message to it.
Yeah, and you called yourself a storyteller earlier. And so did you was what was the creative process? I mean, this is technically your life story about 70%. But like for a guy who's never directed a movie before and maybe written movies like in an amateur way or written screen like you would as a
Yeah.
kid, what was the like creative? How did this start? Like what was your starting point? How were you reaching out to? Like what's the process to like get some funding, all that stuff?
I
What
wrote
does
The
that look like?
Warrior with a person that I met 25 years ago, and we had basically the basic structure of what we wanted to say in it.
Mhm.
And over the years, I had to rewrite, and kind of get it how I wanted. And then once you're in the middle of production and you're editing stuff and you're looking at footage, sometimes there's rewrites that come with that too, because it's
Hmm.
like it's not flowing how I want it to flow. And it's
Hmm.
like, I understand that the message is here, but it's still not flowing. So
Hmm.
it's a
Hmm.
constant like rewrite. And then once you're editing and you're trying to tell the story, it's like there's something missing, and I need to figure out what is missing. So I would have to basically just kind of walk away and say, okay, what is missing that's going to make this thing flow better? So it's a constant moving and shaking, and it's not really this is the script and this is what the script's going to be, and that's it. It's never like that. It's a constant. It's a living and breathing story that needs to to always be edited. Always try to figure out the angles on it. So
I want to pick up on this because drawing from your experience with this particular film, this applies to all creative efforts. When you run into a snag or a writer's block or you're stumped, how do you go about getting over that? Like you said, walking away from it, that's a good thing. How do you clear your mind? How do you refocus? What's your approach?
everybody does it differently. I walk away because um, I have to constantly keep busy because my mind is constantly racing.
Hmm.
Ever since I was a little kid with my drawings, is I've had a huge imagination, huge. So I have to keep busy doing something because my imagination just starts going wild. And sometimes I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and have to go write something down because something popped in my brain. Like, this is the thing. This I have
Hmm.
to write this down, even if it's just on scrap paper. So it's
Hmm.
like I let it happen organically. I don't try to force it. There's some people that try to force things. And in my opinion, this just is my opinion. If you force stuff, then you're willing to cut corners, steal from somebody else, see what somebody else has done that's successful and try to do it and do it the same way that they did it. It's like, no, like your story, you should have some sort of personal attachment to it, even if it's a gangster movie or a horror movie or whatever it is. You should have some sort of personal attachment to it so that you're invested in it, and hopefully your audience is invested in it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great angle and approach, because you can see that even with people that aren't engaged in the type of art that you are, somebody that is into different type of movies, you can see that.
Yeah, for sure. I always thought about like, I have an interesting life story too, but this is about you. But I always thought like would be like, I played a game like who would play me in the story of my life. But I with this kid, Eli Joe, is that his name? That played you.
Okay, so Ellie Joe is the mom.
Okay,
and the little kid is Griffin.
Okay. So what was like choosing Griffin? Sorry, I didn't mean I messed those up when I looked it up. But
it's all good. Okay, so I do things differently than I'm a different cat. We'll just put it out there. Somebody will do open auditions and they'll find their actors through an open audition, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But when I write, I have what I think the person is going to look like and what the person is going to look like on screen. So when I went and reached out to people, I'd already seen what people have done. I looked at YouTube videos. I looked at their screeners. I looked at their shorts and the stuff that they'd done in other production, what they look like on camera. So with Ellie and Morgan and the other little kid that plays the best friend, I'd already seen what they look like on camera. So when I reached out to him, I already had an idea of what I wanted that character to look like. Like the little kid that plays his best friend doesn't have a lisp now because he's a couple years older, but he had a lisp then. And I'm like, that's a perfect little kid best friend that has a lisp. And it's like, he's got the look, he's got the lisp, he's got the attitude to basically be not necessarily the foil, but be the comedic relief in a movie that is about a little kid with cancer.
Right.
I can see that being an important kind of element. Did the best friend in the movie represent a real guy or a group of friends that you had in one person? Or
so I have an older brother. He's 16 months older. I said a little bit earlier.
Yeah, sure.
And when I was at the hospital, my brother wasn't at the hospital too much because he's 16 months older than me. Watching your little brother dying, my parents kind of kept him away. He's at school, or he's at the aunt's house, or he's over here with friends, or he's over there being a little kid. So they kept him away. And then as I got older, me and my brother hung out more and everything else. But when we were super young, and it was like, if I write my brother in the script, he's not going to do anything. It's not going to feel real because I'm forcing a character in there that he was there, but he was there only at certain times. So I'm like, if I create a kid that's his best friend, he can represent my brother, but he can also represent some of the kids that were in the neighborhood where they were very snarky and very quick-witted, and let's go play baseball, let's go play kickball, or whatever it was. So I created this character, and I put little things in it when they're like when they're in the fort, and he's like, well, I didn't want to come over because my mom said you were sick. And he's like, well, what happens if I don't want you to be my best friend? He's like, you have no choice, I'm coming over. And I wanted to make it look like, yes, it's his brother, regardless if he wants to or not. So I put little things in there to make it a brotherly character, even though it's a best friend that lives down the street,
That makes sense.
It's good insight how you had mentioned at the beginning, you did some Hollywoodization. You said it was about 70% accurate, but the things that you changed were to facilitate making a concise film that delivers to the audience better, as opposed to doggedly trying to stick to your exact details of your childhood, which would turn into a film that was too long, or you're struggling to find the right actor. Better to roll that actor into one actor, multiple actors into one.
And where that comes into play is with my mom. So like I went into remission at like 9 or 10, And then 4 years later, my mom passed away of cancer. She had lung cancer. And she didn't smoke, she didn't drink, and she died of lung cancer. She started working for a company, Xerox, the copier company, and she was working with chemicals, and they thought that the chemicals she started to ingest the chemicals, and somehow she got lung cancer because she developed like this cough over like the last couple of years of her life. And it's like she had no idea what the cough was, and then they found out it was a form of lung cancer, and she passed away when I was 14. So like going through all the stuff that I did,
Man.
and then watching a parent basically, do the same thing that I just got done doing, and then she didn't make it. And if I put that in the movie, it would have been a 4 or 5 hour movie. So I wanted to have the aspect of the little kid seeing his mom die without having a 2 hour extended cut movie. So that's why I have it where she feels kind of ill. She walks out, and then all of a sudden she's on the ground, and he's like, Mom. Because I wanted to have that shock of watching your mom die without adding 2 hours to the movie.
Yeah,
So
I could see
that didn't happen. She had cancer, and then she went in for a bone marrow transplant, and the bone marrow transplant didn't take. So she actually died of graft versus host disease, but she wouldn't have been in there if she didn't have cancer. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, she had a form of lung cancer, but she died of graft versus host disease. And people are like, what is that? And it's like, well, if you have a bone marrow transplant, it doesn't take, your organs start shutting down, and they call it graft versus host disease.
Okay, I was going to ask that, but then you get that all the time, I'm assuming. So
Yeah.
Okay. So talk to us about the process of working with a child actor. Is that different? What's that?
Well, they tell you don't do it. Whatever you do, don't do it. Don't work with pets. Don't work with kids. And I said, okay, I'm going to do that. So I knew that it was going to be difficult. So it was just kind of rolling with the punches. The kids are going to be kids. On set, I didn't yell at him too much. It was a couple times where it's like, dude, you need to focus. You need to focus. Like right now, I need to get you in front of the camera. You got to do this thing. And I didn't want to keep the kids over 8 hours because we were shooting during the summer. If I was to do it during the school year, I would have had to get student teachers for them. I would have had to do the whole thing. So I told the parents, I said, I'm going to get them in and out 8 hours. If the adults have to be 12 or 13 hours, we're going to do that. And there was only one day that was real long. Everything else was roughly about 12 hours total. And I told the parents, like 8 hours, we're getting them out. So everything that we can shoot, we're going to shoot as quickly and as early in the day as we can so that we can get them out. So that helped. And then letting the kids be kids when they're not on set. And it's like, okay, you guys got to go over there and not be in the shot. Just be a kid, do the normal kid things. And then, in a half hour, we're going to need you. Okay, Derrick. And then they'd run in there and get their little things on and everything else.
That's great.
Yeah. So it's like, yes, but it's like, I think a lot of it is patience, where I knew going into it that they're kids. So you gotta let them be kids, and you can't just have them like in a corner just looking around like, am I supposed to be on camera now? And it's like, no, you just do your thing. And then when we need you, we'll get you focused. So that was the biggest thing. And like I said, people tell you not to do it, and I said, I'm going to do it anyway.
Well, how the heck would you even told the story without it?
Exactly. Right? And that's why I chose an 8-9-year-old kid, because 8 and 9-year-old kids are still young, but they know the difference between right and wrong. And that's a big difference. Working with an 8 or 9-year-old versus a 5-year-old.
So you can reason with them.
Yeah, you can put a little reason on them. You can bribe them a little bit, If you do this one thing for me, like Griffin.
What's the most effective bribe? You just revealed that you were bribing casually on the set, little childhood bribe, candy bars, toys. Yes. What was the most effective?
All of the above. Pizza,
Yeah, pizza will do it.
Yeah,
Pizza
pizza
drive
every
for
time.
pizza at this age.
It's like,
Yeah,
we'll have hamburgers, and it's like next day, it's like, I know pizza's coming down. We're gonna do pizza, and the kids love the pizza, you know.
my wife bribes me with pizza all the time, so um, so it's all good. So sounds like you had fun with it though, working with the kids, right? It wasn't too much of a struggle.
No, there's only because there's only two kids that was in most of the movie, and then we had
Mhm.
kids when we were at the school, and
Mhm.
wrangling them was a little tougher.
Mhm.
But it still wasn't too bad because parents were on set the entire time.
Mhm.
So like
Mhm.
like with Griffin, I went to the very first day of production. Griffin was really scared because
Mhm. Mhm.
he had been in short films and he was in a couple of different commercials, but he had never carried a movie by himself. It's the first
Mhm.
time he ever
Mhm.
did that, so he's a little
Mhm.
intimidated.
Mhm.
So um, throughout the movie, Griffin gets more comfortable throughout the movie. You can tell
Mhm.
he's a little bit timid at first, but I look at it like that's progression of a character. I don't
Yeah.
have a problem with him being a little bit timid and then over the course of the movie looking like he's more comfortable because it's like that's natural. That's a natural
Mhm.
reaction for a human being to get comfortable at whatever they're doing and I was okay with that. So a lot of people would just be like, what's going on, why is this it's like, no, that's a progression that we can use for these kids. The
Mhm.
hardest part was when I cast them. I wanted to get somebody that kind of looked like me. You don't have to look exactly like me, but you kind of have to look like me. And then when I
Mhm.
found Griffin, it was like, okay, I've got this part. I saw that you did in a couple commercials and short films. I'd seen you on camera, so you look cute on camera. Um, the only problem is you got to cut your hair, and every one of these kids would not cut their hair, and mom is like, nope. And
Mhm.
I didn't want to do a bald cap because I think the bald caps look terrible.
Yeah. I know what you
Hollywood
mean.
does a terrible job in the ball caps. I can
Agreed.
only imagine what an indie filmmaker when you can see like the lines from the kid's hair in the freaking bald cap.
Oh yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
so he agreed to buzz his hair,
Yes.
and then yeah, he agreed to buzz his hair, and then we put little patches in his head so that we could get it on camera that his head was kind of patching.
Mhm.
Because when I was a little kid, when I lost my hair, like I still had like the rent, like the outer edges of my scalp, you could still see hair. Like I wasn't completely bald. Like you could still see there was kind of like peach fuzz around. And it was like I'm okay with if he's gonna buzz cut his hair. We can do things to progress the fact that he's losing his hair. I don't necessarily have to show it. So then that's the scene that we have where he's like, Mom, my hair is falling out. And then his hair's on the that was his real hair. Like when we cut his hair on set, we just put it on the pillow and he's like, Mom, my hair is falling out.
Wow.
Good filmmaking
So
trick, and it beats having to get a wig and tear it apart, throw it down just to film it.
I just didn't want it to look bad. Like I said, Hollywood has a hard time making it look good.
weird. Yeah, sorry, I'll have to cut that part out, but I don't know why my arm is bleeding all of a sudden. um, anyway, we'll cut that out. Yeah, so Derek, so I know that like how much did he understand Griffin, how much did he understand of the story? Like I know like when they're younger, you can kind of trick a kid into kind of playing a difficult role without really like traumatizing him or whatever.
Yeah.
How much did Derek know about that this was you and this was your story and all that?
I think it might have been a little bit of a progression. I
Or
don't
no,
think at
sorry,
first.
Griffin. I'm sorry. You're
No, it's
Derek.
all good. I know. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Because he had told me that he was kind of scared and he was worried that he wouldn't do a good job. And I was like, Griffin, I said, all I want you to do is just be human. I don't want you to act like something that you're not. And I
Mhm.
said that's the audience is going to understand, and you're going to have a progression in the film where you're getting stronger and you're getting stronger. And as an actor, he got stronger as it went. So it worked out
Mhm.
perfectly because the first day or two he was nervous, and you could tell he was nervous. I did a pretty decent job of hiding it in the edit, but you can still kind of tell that he wasn't as comfortable as he should have been. And then throughout the movie, he got more comfortable and more comfortable and more comfortable. And it's like, that worked out perfectly, especially for an arc of a character, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. So you work okay. So I don't know how I'm going to ask this, but was it difficult? Did it bring back any, painful memories, trauma from your experience? Was it like when you're retelling your story? Was there some difficulty there?
When I first wrote it back in the day, yes, where
Okay.
I'm remembering all this stuff and that I wanted to put into the screenplay, but
Mhm.
because I had to rewrite it so many times, and then when we got on set, like I was pretty prepared on like this is what this scene's going to represent this scene's going to represent that. So no, but when I first started writing it 20 years ago or 15 years ago, yeah, there was
Mhm.
a little bit of that just because of remembering back the good times and the bad times. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a mental health counselor by trade, and we call that cognitive processing therapy. So you basically cognitively processed your therapy. You cognitively processed your trauma through writing it down, essentially. And so that's interesting to me. I wanted to ask, though, in the 80s, there probably wasn't like how did, besides just medically, how did the system support your family? Was there mental health counseling? Was there group processing groups for you as a kid, for your parents? Like what did that look like? Was it
there
non-existent?
was, but I didn't understand what was going on until later because there was times where they would have me go like, "Here's a piece of paper and tell me which one is a circle." Oh, it's this
Hmm.
one right here. What's like? What does this say right here? Oh, it says blue. Oh, like they were testing me to make sure that the medicine and my cognitive my ability to function was still there. So they would give me random tests that I was just like, I'm a kid. I'll just okay, I'll give you an answer
Right.
that you want. But they were
Hmm.
testing me and what the effects of the medication was because in the 80s, some of the medication they were giving me wasn't um it was brand new. There
Oh
was a
yeah.
couple of things that they gave me where it was like, we're going to test to see if it's going to work. And it ended
Hmm.
up working, but they were constantly giving me these little tests. So I was a little kid, so I just kind of shrugged it off, but I could tell that they
Right.
were giving me little puzzles and stuff for a reason.
Hmm.
It's something that looking back almost takes on more seriousness because some of those treatments get the best of strong adults. Some of those treatments were tough for strong adults. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like friggin' prednisone. I can't. I swear, I can't play with that at all. So, in the filmmaking process, I'm assuming you had to secure funding, or did you? Was this on your own dime, or what did that
It
look
was
like?
all on my own dime. At the
Wow.
time, I was working for a pharmaceutical company, so I was making more money.
Hmm.
And I took one of my tax checks, and then I took one of my bonus checks, and it
Hmm.
was like, okay, I got about $10,000 to play with, and then I ended up spending late money a little bit later with editing and music and all kinds of other stuff, but
mhm.
roughly about 10,000 to 12,000 for production. And I was like, let's go, and I secured as much as I could ahead of time, like locations.
Mhm.
So I went to Georgia is they support the big filmmakers, but they don't necessarily support the small guys. So there's a lot
Okay.
of stuff that you have to negotiate, we'll just say. So I
Okay.
went to a couple websites where it was location based. So I'm looking for a certain type of location and I would pay for it ahead of time and then schedule it. So
Ah.
I wasn't spending a bunch of money all at one time. I was basically like, okay, I'm going to lock this location down and this location, this paycheck, and then when I get my bonus, I'll lock this one down. I'll lock this one down. So it was a kind of a progression, but total, I probably spent about 10 to 15,000.
Mhm.
Okay, that's interesting. And you're in Georgia now, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, Mike and I are in Georgia. Did you know that?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Heck
yeah.
yeah.
I'm in
I,
Cumming.
I'm in Columbus.
Oh, nice. I'm in
Yeah.
Monticello.
I don't even know where that is. Where's
Monticello.
that in relation to Atlanta?
Well, it's like middle Georgia. It's about an hour and 20 minutes south east.
Okay, so you're closer to Mike than you are to me, maybe. I don't know. I'm terrible with geography.
Columbus is south. I think Columbus is south of me, right? Off 75.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we're
yeah.
probably about at the same latitude, but you're just further east than me. I live right by the border of Alabama, so I'm
Oh,
the edge of
gotcha.
Georgia.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and so, the Georgia is becoming, the new filmmaking and TV making hub. So I guess there was at least more resources and more infrastructure for you to do so, or no?
For acting, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah,
For
right.
everything else, no.
Okay.
So the house that we use for the family house, if you notice that we had an old car that the family drove. There was no cell phones in the movie. I wanted to try to make it as close to the 80s as I could without
Yeah, I
actually
noticed
telling
that.
people that it was the 80s. Because people are going to be like, I can't relate. It's in the 80s and that some boomer and all this other stuff. So I made it sort of like 80s like. So like I can't I have 2025 technology trying to tell a story from 40 years ago. It's difficult to say, okay, we have modern technology and this is supposed to look like it's 1980. So that's why I made it like 1980s adjacent, where it's got very 80s vibe to it, but it's not. I don't exactly come out and say sometime in the 1980s.
Right,
I just
right.
made sure that like there was no modern cars in it. I made sure that there was no cell phones in it. The kids were dressing in like very like conservative types clothing because I didn't want to have it too like flashy. And it's like, well, that I saw that at the store last week, and it's like I wanted to make it so that they had colors, but it was very like generic kind of, because I didn't want somebody to be like, well, that didn't exist until 1995. So it's like I purposely chose things certain color wise and then certain look wise so that somebody couldn't say, well, that didn't exist during that time. So it's like I'm a nerd like that. So I don't know if people notice that, but I do.
That's good attention to detail, because the phones is a subtle but like a very naming thing as far as what decade you're in. If you have a landline phone plugged into the wall, you're in 80s or 90s versus basic like rudimentary cell phones, late 90s, early 00s. And if it's a smartphone, if it's a little block, then you're post 2010. So it would immediately date the movie.
Yes. Yeah. And it's pretty funny is we had a landline phone that the little kid uses twice. And the first time that he picked it up in the first scene, he went like this, said hello, and he had it backwards. He had the because he had no idea how to work it. So he's all like, hello. And everybody just kind of looked at it and just started laughing.
That's so funny. It reminds me of those videos you see sometimes where like they'll line up a bunch of kids and show them a Nintendo and see if they can figure out how to work it and stuff like that. Yeah. I never thought about that, when looking at the movie. So because have you seen Stranger Things, Derrick?
Yeah, I haven't seen the last season, but I've seen the 3 or 4 seasons.
Sure. So then you're aware that Stranger Things is overtly 80s, right? Like they probably spent so much money on costume design and like securing song rights and things like that. And so I like the creative workaround for that, which was just making it 80s adjacent. Because you could have gotten like way into the details of that. And I also think too that like you said, it makes the movie more accessible to people now, right? It's not like looking at something from 40 years ago. It's accessible to everyone, right?
Yeah, because I don't know how many times I talk to somebody and it's like, oh, something that's common knowledge to me. I'll just be like, oh yeah, and they're just like, I've never heard of that before, and I'm like, okay. So I didn't want my movie to be dated where somebody's like, well, it's in the 80s. I don't know anything about the 80s. That's why I made it 80s adjacent, so that somebody in 2025 can watch it and enjoy it or cry or whatever it is.
Right.
Well, I'm not going to lie, Derek. I normally don't like movies that make me cry, but I am strongly inspired to watch your film now.
Nice.
Yeah,
Shoes.
So, did you go to the film festival route? Like, and what's the if so, what's the process of?
Nowadays, there's a website that does 90% of the film festivals.
Mm-hmm.
I placed in one festival, and then I have it submitted to a Georgia Independent Film Festival, which is in July. So
Okay.
hopefully, the film festivals I placed in one, and then I got rejected from a Christian one, which, yeah, okay. I don't think that Christian filmmakers
You
and
weren't
distribution.
proselytizing hard enough. Obviously, you gotta preach
I
harder.
think it's because the little kid is questioning that they're
Mm.
automatically like, "Oh, it's not a Christian movie," and it's like, actually, it's got Christian themes all through it. I wouldn't call it a Christian movie. I'd call it like a family drama, but it's got little hints of Christian in it, and it's like, so yeah, they rejected me basically, just like, so I don't know if it's hurting me that I don't have a celebrity in it, because some people do care about there being a celebrity in the movie. I care about the work. I care about telling a good story. And I reached out to a couple like B-list actors or C-list actors when I was prepping it, and they wanted too much money. If you're in SAG, is you can work an independent film and just kind of work under the table. And I had one guy that's been in some dramas. He was in Remember the Titans, and then there was a couple other things that he's been in. And I wanted him to come in, just do it one day. I've got somebody that people recognize in the movie, and he was kind of interested in it, but he wouldn't. His rate was too much. I couldn't afford it, because it's not necessarily just his day rate, but you have to pay for his insurance, and you got to pay for his social security benefits and all this other stuff. So you're paying, instead of somebody making $200 for a day for an indie film, you're going to end up paying them $600-700 a day because of stuff that you have to do because of the union. And then his representation probably gets a cut too. So it's like, I couldn't afford it. And it's like, if I can't afford a celebrity, I gotta make the performances as good as I possibly can. And I think I did. What I sought out to do, I think I accomplished by having good performances by 8-year-old kids. And the doctor is an award-winning. He's won awards for theater. The guy that plays the doctor. Great people that are great at what they do and their craft, but they don't have the name that some of these Hollywood people require. You know what I mean?
Don't worry about it. Paul Giamatti will write a nice review for your movie, and that will be all the name recognition that you need.
That'd be cool.
So you got in touch with us through Alpha Trevette. Do you know Alpha?
I think he was at my premiere. Because
Alpha's a really cool guy.
I don't know if you guys know Lainey Smith. She's an actress.
No.
She is friends with him, and he and premiere when we showed The Warrior for the first time in Atlanta a couple months ago. And I called Lainey and it was like, I'm trying to do promotion for the movie. Do you know anybody that does podcasts? And she said, well, let me get back with you. And then she had recommended you guys and said, hey, they got a podcast and they would love to have you, come on and this and that. And that's sort of how the ball started rolling.
That was really nice of her, because if she had actually known anybody that did podcasts, she would have told you about it.
Yeah. Alpha is my brother's father-in-law. I've known him for.
That was meant to be self-deprecating. We appreciate her recommending us to you, but that was meant to be self-deprecating. We're not big-time names, no way.
No, but we do like providing platforms to people who are artists, who've got a good story to tell, who are interesting and fun to talk to, and you've been all those things today, so we appreciate that. I've known Alpha for over 20 years. I believe he's in SAG or something like that. I don't know.
Okay.
But he did an early episode of our show. We've been doing this show since October, Mike, or November. I always get it, something like that.
I think
and
we
so
kicked
it's like
in October.
Yeah, I know. I was like, let me get a guy like, because we do a lot of ancient history. I don't know if you've looked at what we do, but like
Yeah,
UFO
I watched
stuff.
some of the videos, the interviews that you guys do, and you guys definitely do it where you get interesting people on. And
Yeah.
I was like, this is cool. Like I like interesting people. Like I have a friend that I do a little bit of podcasting with him. He's got a YouTube channel. And I have a friend that is associated with Motown back in the day. And
Oh,
I
cool.
befriended him in LA when I lived in LA. And
Mhm.
I've kept in touch with him and everything else. And I'm trying to have him come on the podcast. And he's like, why do you want to, why, like, why did you ask me? And I'm like, because you're interesting.
Exactly.
You worked with some of the greatest producers of all time. And
Exactly.
and it's like, yes, I'm enamored by that you worked with them, but I'm enamored about the process. How did you
Yes.
go from a small town guy working with one of the greatest producers of all time? Like what happened in there? So it's like, hopefully we can get him on and we can ask him the questions and stuff. But yeah, I'm the same way. It's like I like interesting people because
Mhm.
it's not about getting from point A to point B. It's everything in between, and that's
Yes.
what I like. Is I like everything in between that got you to that part.
Yes.
So yeah, so when I watched you guys' I watched a couple of the videos, I'm like, oh yeah, like I completely get what they're trying to do is speak to interesting people. So
That's it.
Your passion and your enthusiasm are infectious. This has given me a boost here just in the last hour.
Yeah,
nice.
I actually needed one too. I was having a weird day. So this started first thing in the morning, but so I appreciate you because you have a really infectious laugh too. I don't know if anybody's ever told you that
Yeah,
before,
I'm a goofy guy.
It's all right, man.
but so yeah, and like that's what Mike and I try to. We have our interests, which are reflect in the guests we have, but we don't discriminate on what types of what if you just have an interesting story to tell, which you do, we want to talk to you. And if
Yeah.
you're an interesting way of presenting it, which you've done, and I, I'm really excited. So is there like a next step after this? Once you promote this movie and it's done, are you planning on filmmaking more, or what do you think?
I have a couple of scripts written, but they're very big budget.
Sure, yeah.
I gotta dial it back a little bit and try to figure out the next thing. And I'm
Hmm.
really leaning toward um like true crime
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and cop and robber drama cops and rom cops and robbers dramas are really
Uh-huh.
popular and have
Uh-huh.
been for like the last 5 years. So
Sure.
I was
Yeah, yeah,
thinking
yeah.
about my next one being like a 6 episode 20-minute per episode drama about like two cops that aren't necessarily they do all the dirty stuff that most of the cops don't want to do.
Mm.
So I don't know the angles of what's going to happen, but I want to shoot it in like deep in Georgia and the
Mhm,
backwoods of
mhm,
Georgia. Like I don't want to have it like we're in Atlanta. Hi. You know what I
mhm.
mean? Like I want to have it where they're dealing with cults. They're dealing with uh people that like I live in rural Georgia, so it's like everybody's real super nice, but you still don't know everybody's angle. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Sure.
And
What's
it's
going
like
on deep in those backwoods?
you don't know
Yeah.
their past and you don't ask. So I want to explore that and have two guys that are sort of like they're cops and they know that life of living in Georgia and in the backwoods of Georgia. So I want to explore that more. I haven't fleshed it out in more, but that's how my process is. It's like I get an idea and then it's just like one thing at a time, just kind of
Percolates.
just percolates. So right now I'm
Mm,
percolating.
Heck
got
yeah.
it. I think that's a good place to go because you're right. That is very popular. It's like the only thing my wife and I can agree on to watch together is true crime. Otherwise, we're interested in different stuff. And I just remember too. So my I'm Canadian. My brother and I grew up in Canada, but he moved here over 20 years ago, and I remember visiting him here. And I think I was probably 20 years old or something the first time I visited him in Georgia, 21, something like that. And I remember like he's driving, he's like, oh, and that's the Snake Church over there and stuff like that. And I'm like, Snake Church? Like what? And so there's definitely a lot to explore there. Appalachian, spooky Appalachian stuff, backwoods family, thing. So I'm excited to see where that percolates.
Heck yeah.
So yeah,
So
it's percolating.
We appreciate the sneak preview of what is percolating because not everybody gets to know that.
Yeah, some of the ambitious stuff that I have is I have a biopic about John Wilkes Booth, who killed Lincoln. And because, again, I want to go from a little kid in a theater family killing the president of the United States. Where is that process? How do you go from there to there? So that's why I was interested in it. But the costume design would be
that's going to be rough. Has anyone told that story?
There's been documentaries, but I don't think I've ever seen an actual movie about John Wilkes Booth.
That's not a bad idea. I don't want to. I feel like we shouldn't be saying this so that somebody doesn't steal that. That's literally never been done. Because I always wonder, like, if one day somebody's going to, as a species, we're going to run out of movie ideas. We're kind of there with like how modern filmmaking is. They're just retelling reboots and sequels and what Marvel character can we
lazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, the name of the movie is called Freedom from Him. And people are just like, why would you call it Freedom from Him? Because that's how John Wilkes Booth felt, that the world would be better if we were free of Abraham Lincoln. And that's sort of like, that's why I wanted to title it Freedom from Him. And then have, like, on the cover, have John Wilkes Booth and have, like, maybe a Lincoln in the background or something like that. But
sitting in the theater.
Something like that. Have you guys ever been to the Ford's Theater in DC? It's
no,
absolutely amazing.
But I don't think we went to Ford's Theater.
When you walk in there, it was 20 years ago, 15 years ago when I was there, and there was a professor from George Washington University that basically kind of tells you the story. He makes you feel like you're literally right there. It's pretty crazy, and it's just the vibe that when you walk in, it's like, like wow. Like Lincoln was standing right there, sitting right there, and John Wilkes Booth, jumped off the thing and landed right here. It's pretty wild.
That is wild. Mike and I are history guys, are more like ancient history. Are you into like American history?
Yeah, I'm an American history guy for sure.
That's cool. I was just thinking there's a lot of historical sites here in my town, in my city, that maybe would be good for filming something, Abraham Lincoln era type of stuff. I don't even know.
Cool. I'm not the type of guy that's denies history. Good, bad, I want to explore it. As a storyteller, I don't want somebody saying, well, you can't do this because of this. I want to get the process of why he was a childhood actor and then he kills the president of the United States. Like, what happened during that time? So that's what motivates my brain, is the process.
Historically speaking, what do we know about what happened during that time, or is that something you'd kind of take some liberty with?
I mean, there is a lot of documentaries about it, and then
I'm gonna watch one now. I need to know.
The movie Lincoln came out 7-8 years ago.
Sure.
Great movie. But they didn't explore John Wilkes Booth, really. They just he was sort of in the background, that at the end he killed Lincoln. But I wanted to explore the process of him turning and thinking that somebody is the problem and he's not the problem, and that he had a girlfriend that got so pissed off at him she took a knife and basically cut his face because he was such a vain person, because he was an actor and he came from an acting family. He was very vain. So she hit him right where it hurts, and she cut his face, and he had like a gash on his face for a little while. And people are just like, "How can you treat him like that?" And it's like, how do you? I'm like I said, I'm just interested in the process of how do you get crazy.
I can see how this is fleshing out.
I actually am really looking forward to touching back with you and finding out what you learn as you investigate this.
If I could get somebody to fund it, it's on. I mean, it's written.
Heck yeah.
I wrote that probably 15 years ago because I'm a history guy. So like if I hook onto something and then I just go, so.
Very cool. And so I know we can find your film on Amazon. Is there anywhere else that it's located?
So far, just Amazon. I have an aggregator that I go through for my film, and unfortunately, they're not getting it done like I want them to do. So I kind of have to I got to figure out some other ways to get my film out there. So we'll see. Right now it's on Amazon. And then it's supposed to be on a site called Fossum, which is one of the free sites where there's all kinds of movies and stuff. They picked up the rights to for the movie, but they haven't posted it on their site or anything like that. So right now it's just on Amazon at the moment. I'd love for it to be on Tubi and some of the other places, but there's, from what I understand, is Tubi was so into capturing as much indie films and black indie films that they could, and they got not necessarily burned out, but kind of, when it comes to indie films. And it's like they're not making their money back. And then some of the stuff that Tubi was showing is like, these actors are not good. Like, why is this on this platform? So that they started kind of getting a reputation. So they started kind of pulling back on some of the indie films. And I think when they start pulling back, my film is still sitting there waiting for them to pull forward. So it's like, hopefully that happens, but we'll see.
That makes sense.
Very cool.
Well, we'll put the Amazon link front and center, and we certainly hope to provide more links in the near future, Tubi and whatever other platforms pick up your film, because they will.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Appreciate that. I mean, I think it's obviously I'm coming from a place of, I made the movie, so I understand that people that from the outside in, but I think it holds up. I think it tells a story that I wanted to tell. I think it looks good. It sounds good. The music that I use are very, very precise music. The only music that from the original cut of it that I had to change was the first song in the movie, because I had Walking on Sunshine and couldn't get the rights to use Walking on Sunshine, so I had to change the song. I reached out to Universal a couple years ago, and they're like, "Well, it's going to be a lot of money that you probably don't have," and they wanted to probably charge me like $20,000 just to use Walking on Sunshine.
Wow. Yeah, we were talking to a guy the other day whose his YouTube channel is very like 1920s, like he does this whole like 1920s explorer Indiana Jones thing.
Okay.
And his workaround was what is that called, Mike? When something is
public domain.
Public domain.
2025. Yeah. If it was recorded before 1925, it's absolutely free to use no matter what now. So.
Yeah, so at least if you do a John Wilkes Booth movie, you can use the music for free from back then.
I'll have plenty of music for sure.
Some more ragtime type of tunes.
Yeah, maybe there's like a museum or something that has the costumes and stuff that would either donate or make it cheap or something. I don't know. I need to see this movie now, Derek. Let's go.
I want to see it too. I think it becomes something. And like I said, I like exploring different, even though it's like, yes, there's been Lincoln documentaries and a Lincoln movie, but I don't think anybody's explored the side of why John Wilkes Booth did what he did.
No, in fact, in the movie Lincoln, I was rather disappointed that we didn't get much John Wilkes Booth involved, just because it was the collision of their two lives. I felt like they could have spent 15% on John Wilkes Booth. I would have thought, but they didn't. So it is what it is.
And there's only like one like painting that's out there that I saw online. I don't know if it's a painting or what the deal was, but John Wilkes Booth was at the inauguration of Lincoln. He was in the crowd.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I don't know if he had already been like obsessing about killing Lincoln during that time, but he was in the crowd at his inauguration. So it's like that was a lot of the movies and documentaries never talk about that John Wilkes Booth was literally there.
Wow.
I'm getting Lee Harvey type of vibe. Something tells me that there's a far deeper and tumultuous story.
I think so too. I think John Wilkes Booth was linked to people that weren't a fan of Lincoln, regardless. I mean, you can call him a Southern sympathizer, but I think he got persuaded by people that were in some sort of higher power, and that's why he become obsessed with making sure that Lincoln doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's sort of the birthplace of the whole CIA mind control thing. Possibly, I don't know. This day and age, I don't rule anything out. So.
Hey, this has been a blast, Derrick. It's been so great getting to know you. I'm not nothing of a filmmaker myself. I dabble in some video editing with Dave. That's it.
Well, but you're still doing storytelling by doing with the show. You're still telling a story. So
Yeah, and we're helping facilitate people tell their story, and we have sort of themes that we've like kind of woven into our choices of guests and topics we cover and that kind of thing. But we didn't want to get pigeonholed into the ancient history or the UFO thing. We really do want to talk to people from all different backgrounds and all walks of life, and you know so I just want to say we're really thankful for you coming on the show and spreading your message. You've got a very positive message and a very positive personality, and I think it'll be received well by our platform. So
awesome.
Yes, sir. Did you have anything else you wanted to add about the film before we wrap?
No, I hopefully people watch it, go on Amazon and rate it. Tell me what you think. And I think people that are honest about watching it and taking in the story, I think you're gonna enjoy it, and some people will relate to it, and hopefully people just just enjoy good storytelling, and hopefully that's not the only one that's in the pipeline.
Heck yeah.
I'm all for the John Wilkes Booth one. So please check back in with us whenever you are working on.
Yeah, I need
else,
somebody
okay?
who's ambitious with myself that's got some money to burn.
As soon as we meet them, we're going to point them your direction. Later this year, we'll run into somebody with deep pockets and a passion for like Civil War era, 1800s era history, and we're going to point them in your direction. Okay.
I appreciate that. I had a girl that was like kind of a intern on my movie, and she had a full-time job, so she'd only come for a couple hours like every day or every other day or something. And I kind of involved her in the process, and because she wanted to learn how to make a movie, so I called her and showed her like a rough cut of the movie and said, "Okay, this is what I'm looking at," and I involved her in the process. And then at the premiere, and I was like, just because she's very smart and she's very witty. And I was like, well, so when you become a studio head, don't forget us little people. And she just started laughing because she has that type of like acronym. Is because I've been around those type of people where they're very witty, but they're very sharp. And she liked that. And I'm like, well, just don't forget about the little people when you go to the top.
Yeah, well, you never know. Like you keep rubbing elbows with the right people. You spreading your personality and your vibe around. Somebody might pick that up, and I really hope that happens for you, Derrick. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on the show, Derrick.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Yeah.